California, sunshine and solar. All new homes will soon have to have solar panels.
What is the problem or the challenge?
Picking a panel that will have longevity.
This week, the dirty little secret of a clean energy source.
Malaria, the mosquito-borne disease, may have killed half the people who ever lived and is still one of the world's most deadly diseases. But one of the poorest and smallest countries in South America stands alone. That's because Paraguay is malaria-free. Is that a remarkable feat?
A remarkable public health landmark in our history.
We look at how a tiny nation has solved one of the world's biggest problems.
The Wayback Machine, my incomparable invention for traveling through time, has been set for the year 1513.
In simple terms, if you can, explain what the Wayback Machine is.
The Wayback Machine is the history of the web. So it's a service that for the last 21 years has been backing up large chunks of the public web.
It enables people to do what?
Oh, to go back in time.
We'll introduce you to the man in charge of the real Wayback Machine.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. California is the first state to require all new homes have solar power. That could lead the way for other states to follow suit. And who doesn't love the idea of free, clean energy from the sun? But it's not quite that simple. It turns out free can be costly and clean can be dirty. Today's cover story is solar opposites.
California leads the nation in use of sun-driven power, with projects like the historic Los Angeles YMCA. Built in 1928, it has a new system of solar panels and solar hot water, saving money on energy. Solar power has come a long way since the first sun-powered telephone call using a solar battery in Georgia in 1955.
Notice that a man's shadow falling across the cells, blocking out the sun, is enough to stop the train.
California architect Vitas Murrow shows why California is perfectly situated to soak up the sun.
This is Carbon Canyon, and you're looking at another street up here called Coal Canyon Road.
Yet despite the Golden State's optimal positioning, climate, and solar innovations, energy prices are still among the highest in the nation. On average, Californians pay 60% more than the rest of us. The new solar panel rule aims to change that.
In simple terms, can you tell us what this new regulation about solar panels on houses says and does?
If you want to build new houses in California, you must put solar panels on them. And you must put enough to power the house most of the time.
Thomas Elias is a syndicated columnist who's covered energy issues in California for 50 years. He says mandatory solar panels will add about $10,000 onto the price of a new home, but save costs in the long run.
What would you say are the good points?
Well, the first thing is that the average buyer of a new home in California will make money off of this, because while that approximately $10,000 would add about $40 a month to the average mortgage, it will also save you about $80 a month in electric bills. So you'll make $40 a month as long as you own the house.
Over 30 years, an average homeowner will save an estimated $19,000 in energy costs, eventually more than making up for the added cost of solar panels.
I personally think it's a good idea. I come from a city where it's very sunny all year round. It's 100+ degrees right now, and it would help with the energy consumption.
I'm torn because it's just going to add more price to the new homes that are already expensive, but in the long run, it will save them money on energy and make a cleaner environment for California.
Obviously, HOA shouldn't prevent you from using solar power, but to mandate it, I think that's going to an extreme.
So technically, this is a perfect place for a house with solar panels.
Absolutely, yes. And the orientation of this roof is primed to run them, facing forward all the way down this roof.
Monterey's modern home designs on the sunny cliffs overlooking Malibu lend themselves ideally to solar panels. But he says there are big flaws with California's upcoming solar panel rule.
What is the problem or the challenge?
Picking a panel that will have longevity and that is not a particularly wasteful process that's involved in making the panels.
But to be clear, you are a solar power advocate.
Yes, I just don't like the quality of the panels that we're getting and the fact that no one bothers to differentiate between crummy panels and not quite so crummy panels.
Some call it the dirty little secret of this clean energy source. From start to finish, solar panels leave a trail of hazardous waste. An Associated Press investigation found that over 5 years, 17 of 41 solar panel manufacturers in California reported how much waste they produced, 46.5 million pounds of sludge and contaminated water. 1.4 million pounds of waste was transported to 9 other states.
So this is your house.
It is. We've been here for about 10 years.
And did you try the solar panel thing?
We sure did.
Adding to the waste issue, Murrow says many of today's solar panels don't last very long.
So right over here.
He showed us where he removed solar panels from his own house after less than 3 years.
You mean this spot?
Yeah. This spot right here, yeah.
Okay.
And this has happened not just here, but in a few other houses that I designed, and the owners installed panels that did not last.
Used solar panels are already a global environmental threat, according to the pro-nuclear power group Environmental Progress. It found that solar panels create 300 times more toxic waste per unit of energy than nuclear power plants. Households with solar roofs produce up to 60% more electronic waste than non-solar households.
I think they will find that many of these panels that are installed are going to go straight to landfill, and it will be a groundwater issue. There will be an issue disposing of these materials and ultimately reclaiming them. It's like everything from cell phones to computers. It's nasty, nasty stuff.
A partial solution, he says, could be neighborhood solar farms, more easily maintained with less waste. In fact, California's new rule allows new homes to use rooftop panels or a shared solar grid that serves multiple homes. In the end, California's experience matters to people living in other states.
Do you think California's solar mandate will likewise somehow resonate across the country, impact other areas too?
Give it a couple of years, and other states that are suited to solar, like Arizona, southern New Mexico,
Florida, maybe?
a lot of Texas, a lot of the Gulf Coast, and Florida, yeah, all the way across the southeast. These kind of places can use a solar mandate, and it would work.
Do you think in a general sense there's a trend here that as California goes, so will go the rest of the nation, or at least the sunny states?
Clearly, that is the way that this is going to go. And it's not necessarily a good thing, because I think California is moving prematurely on this technology.
The new law applies to California homes built after January 1st, 2020. Right now, it's estimated a bit less than 20% of homes in the Golden State have solar panels. Ahead on Full Measure, malaria has been a notorious killer throughout history. Scott Thuman has the incredible story of how one small South American country stopped it. Next. Malaria is one of the oldest known diseases in the world and one of the biggest killers throughout human history. It's developed resistance to every drug designed to beat it. Believe it or not, the small nation of Paraguay has surprised scientists with its success in beating malaria. Scott Thuman finds out how.
What you are looking at is the front line of a war, an unending battle fought around the world against a disease that kills nearly 500,000 people a year. Malaria is the best known and perhaps most stubborn mosquito-borne disease on the planet. And globally, almost $3 billion a year is spent trying to eradicate it. But here, one of the poorest and smallest countries in South America stands alone. That's because Paraguay is malaria-free. Is that a remarkable feat?
A remarkable public health landmark in our history.
Dr. Luis Castellanos oversees anti-malaria programs at the Pan American Health Organization based in Washington, D.C.
In South America, remember, Paraguay is very poor as compared to Brazil or Argentina, and they haven't yet done that. So it's some remarkable example for the other countries to say how these guys managed to do that before us.
It was that big of a deal?
Yes, yes it is.
So big, we went to Paraguay to find out, visiting the headquarters of CENEPA, the organization that for the last half-century has put mosquitoes in the crosshairs. So you haven't had a domestic case of malaria since 2011?
Not a single case since 2011, and that was confirmed after a visit of experts from the World Health Organization. They checked the reports and visited places where malaria had been bad. The last case was in December 2011.
For the last 4 years, Dr. Nicolas Aguayo has led an effort that began back in the 1950s, when 1 in every 10 Paraguayans was sick with the disease. So how exactly did they do it? How did they beat malaria? Key to their success, they claim, a system they call 137. Translated, a 137 strategy, identifying potential cases within a day of someone showing symptoms, confirming an infection within 3 days, and within a week, treating the patient and spraying around the area where they live. It also involved flagging passengers on flights arriving from malarial countries and looking for symptoms, an army of volunteers who helped report suspected cases, and a widespread sense of urgency. Do that consistently across the country and for years on end, and you win. A lot of people would call that a colossal breakthrough.
Yes, we had a series of celebrations at CENEPA. Now the ceneperos, the people who work here, are considered national heroes because a country like Paraguay with limited resources nevertheless got rid of malaria. This shows with a good strategy, you can achieve your goals.
Why isn't everyone banging down your door trying to do exactly what you're doing?
Yes, there are many countries banging on our door for help. They want to borrow our experts to work in other countries. I don't like that idea much because we need them here.
And that's because they know you can't let up. If people don't worry about it, if people don't pay attention to it as much as you believe they should, the end result is...
It's people getting back to being infected with malaria. Even in the U.S. gets 1,000, 2,000 imported cases every year. Imagine if U.S. wouldn't do much to keep an eye and detecting and treating these people. You know, in a good summer in this country, you'll have a huge outbreak of malaria because you may have the mosquito, you have people infected, and the spread is easy.
And you don't have to imagine. Just look at Venezuela, once on the brink of eradication. As its economy collapsed, malaria cases jumped 70% in 2017. Puerto Rican-born public health entomologist Manuel Uberas has spent 30 years killing mosquitoes around the world. The company he works for makes spraying equipment used to contain the populations. He says the world needs to wake up to the dangers of malaria and other mosquito-borne diseases.
The world is sitting on a powder keg, smoking a cigar, and flicking the ashes on the floor. It is time, right now, that we are in between epidemics, to tell the population, listen, we need your help. No country has the government or a program that is big enough to handle a mosquito-borne disease outbreak. No country, even the United States. Without the community's engagement, we will have another outbreak of Zika. We will continue to have dengue. We will continue to have chikungunya. And Lord knows what else is coming.
Which can mean different methods in different settings. The World Health Organization says Africa has 200 million malaria cases a year, around 90% of the global total. In Rwanda, they're considering using drones to spray larvicide in areas where mosquitoes breed. And in Zambia, health officials in some areas have treated entire populations with anti-malaria medication to stop the spread, even if they don't show symptoms. Though in Paraguay, what won the battle against malaria was a matter of simple communication.
Every time someone has fever, let us know. Let someone know so we can check and see what's happening with this individual.
That sounds so simple, though.
Yeah, but it's so hard to actually make it happen. It's very difficult. And that's the second greatest achievement of Paraguayans, that no one with suspicious of fever was left behind.
So who else is copying those strategies?
Well, a lot of people are, but Argentina and El Salvador hope to be certified malaria-free within the next year. Those would be successes. Paraguay has shown that if the mindset is there between the government and the people, it's also not that expensive. They've spent just $22 million over 5 years to do it.
Great information. Thanks, Scott. Coming up on Full Measure, it's time travel for the web. We look back at the internet archiving system, the Wayback Machine. If you're old enough, like I am, you might remember the cartoon Wayback Machine from the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. That was way before the popular internet. Today, there's an amazing real Wayback Machine online. I recently spoke to the project's director, Mark Graham.
Hello out there.
The original Wayback Machine was a cartoon way for Mr. Peabody and Sherman to go back in time.
The Wayback Machine, my incomparable invention for traveling through time, has been set for the year 1513.
Which direction are we heading, Mr. Peabody?
South, Sherman, specifically Florida.
The online Wayback Machine doesn't exactly do that, but in some ways, it's almost as cool.
In simple terms, if you can, explain what the Wayback Machine is.
The Wayback Machine is the history of the web. So it's a service that for the last 21 years has been backing up large chunks of the public web.
Mark Graham is the director of the Wayback Machine. We caught up with him at a conference in Florida where he was extolling the virtues of archiving to a room of investigative journalists.
It enables people to do what?
Oh, to go back in time, to be able to look at the content associated with web pages as it's changed, as maybe those web pages have gone away. Maybe they're not available anymore on the live web.
Information disappears from the live web faster than you might think. Several studies have found the average life expectancy of a web page is under 100 days.
Who thought of this idea and why?
So a guy named Brewster Kahle thought of it. Brewster was a pioneer of the early part of the internet.
This is a tall order, but can you explain in simple terms, technically, how this works?
Sure. Well, first of all, there's lots of computers involved. It's no longer just one computer, literally thousands of computers and lots of software that has been written and evolved over the decades now. So what one does is you start with a list of websites or with URLs, and the software will go to each of those URLs, will look at what's on those pages, will capture all of those resources, all those pictures, all those images, videos, CSS, JavaScript, HTML files, etc. It'll identify links on those pages, and then it'll go to those pages. It'll crawl like a spider to those pages, evaluate the resources on those pages, and continue on based upon whatever rules are set up.
I'd like to thank you for it because I've used it quite a bit. I found it very valuable in news gathering. In one example, in 2015, I found that the government had wiped some vaccine injury data statistics off of their website, and I was able to use the Wayback Machine to find them and retrieve them for a story that I was working on.
Archiving government websites is something that we put a lot of attention to. In fact, at the end of every administration, when there's a change in administration, you expect things are going to change. And so we go in and we take extra care to archive as much of government websites as we can. About 7,000 federal government websites. The last time the administration changed, we archived about 200 terabytes of content.
Where are the places where the information is most in danger of disappearing?
There's issues about information that's published in the first place and then not available to people, maybe within a region, right? For example, right now, in Turkey, you can't get access to Wikipedia. In Egypt, you can't get access to hundreds of websites. In the United States, information is removed from social media platforms. YouTube removed 8.3 million videos last year. Facebook removed 1.3 billion accounts alone. Now, there may be very good reasons for removing those accounts or removing certain videos, the violations of term of service, etc. Maybe in one country, but in another country, the issues may be political in nature. It may be because a ruling party may not want an opposition party to have access to a platform for the people.
If I use the Wayback Machine, it's free to me.
Sure.
How does it make money? How is it funded?
It doesn't make money. The Wayback Machine is a service of the Internet Archive. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit. We do many things. The mission statement of the Internet Archive is universal access to all knowledge.
Here are a couple of stats for you. The Wayback Machine was launched back in 2001, and to date, it's saved more than 333 billion web pages and counting. You can use it yourself anytime. To find it, just search Wayback Machine or go straight to it at archive.org. Up next, expensive coffee cups and toilet seat lids. We follow the money to find out where your tax dollars are being spent. In today's Follow the Money, Senator Chuck Grassley has harsh words for the Pentagon concerning what he calls continuing waste of your tax dollars. In an op-ed, he flagged a long list of unacceptable purchases. They include individual 3D printed toilet seat lids, $14,000 for each one, and $1,280 each for self-heating coffee cups. Grassley likens the examples to the Pentagon's $436 hammers in the 1980s and $117 soap dish covers and $999 pliers in the 90s. Grassley says a big part of the problem is the Pentagon's convoluted structure. Hundreds of different accounting systems with hundreds of different processes. The perfect environment, he says, for waste, fraud, and abuse. The Pentagon recently released its first full financial audit at a cost of $400 million taxpayer dollars, which Grassley says itself is a waste of money if the Pentagon's accounting system can't provide usable data. Here on Full Measure, we've reported on China's ambitious plans to dominate world technology, and sometimes by spying on American interests. Now there's a concern about our transportation systems. Washington, D.C. buys its metro cars from China. A recent report from a retired U.S. Army Brigadier General says that may be a threat to national security. The report says rail cars made by China could leave us vulnerable to hacking, spying, or other interference. Washington is taking the warning to heart. 4 U.S. senators sent a letter to D.C.'s Metro General Manager saying it should take cybersecurity into account before choosing who makes its next round of cars. Next week on Full Measure, while our nation's lawmakers struggle about how to make health care affordable, they've already done it in one state. That's thanks to Marilyn Bartlett, a state official who fearlessly took on untouchable industries.
We had the hospitals very, very upset with us. We had some legislators upset with us. A woman flipped me off and left the meeting.
Wait until you hear the results and how radical pricing reform in one state could be a roadmap for solutions for all of us. That's on the next Full Measure. Until then, thanks for watching. We'll be searching for more stories to hold powers accountable.